Story 1. My name is Sarah, and I'm 28 now. But when I was 10 years old, something happened that my entire family still talks about, even though we try not to. We lived in a 2-story house in Maine. My bedroom was upstairs, and I had this huge walk-in closet that I used to love playing in. I'd build forts, hide my toys in there, the usual stuff kids do. But one summer, everything changed. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling like someone was watching me. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. But then I started hearing whispers. They were faint, like someone talking just quiet enough that I couldn't make out the words. And they were always coming from my closet. One night, I woke up around 3 a.m., and the whispers were louder than usual. I was too scared to get up and check, so I just pulled my blanket over my head and tried to go back to sleep. But then I heard my closet door slowly creak open. I peeked out from under the blanket and saw a shadow moving inside the closet. It was tall, taller than any adult I knew, and it was just standing there in the darkness. I couldn't see a face or any features, just a dark shape. Then it started moving toward my bed. I screamed. My parents came running in and turned on the light. The closet door was wide open, but there was nothing inside. My dad checked every corner of the room, under the bed, everywhere. Nothing. My mom thought I just had a nightmare, but I insisted it was real. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same whispers, same shadow. I screamed again, and again my parents found nothing. This went on for almost a week. My parents were getting frustrated, thinking I was making it up for attention. But then my younger brother started complaining about the same thing. He slept in the room next to mine, and he said he could hear whispering through the wall at night. He said it sounded like someone was having a conversation, but he couldn't understand the words. My dad decided to stay up one night and watch. He sat in the hallway between our rooms with the lights off. Around 1:30 a.m., he heard it. He later told us it sounded like 2 people talking in hushed tones, and it was definitely coming from my closet. He opened my bedroom door and walked over to the closet. He said the whispering stopped the second he touched the doorknob. He opened it and shined a flashlight inside. That's when he found something that made his blood run cold. There was a small hole in the back wall of the closet, hidden behind some boxes. It led directly into the attic space between our house and the neighbor's house. The hole was just big enough for a person to crawl through. My dad called the police immediately. When they searched the attic, they found a sleeping bag, some food wrappers, and a notebook filled with drawings. Sketches of our house, our rooms, and even drawings of me and my brother sleeping. Someone had been living in our attic and watching us through that hole. They never caught whoever it was. The police said the person must have left as soon as they realized we'd discovered the hole. My parents sealed it up the next day, and we moved out of that house 3 months later. I still have nightmares about it. Story 2. I'm 34 now, and I've never been able to fully shake what happened when I was 7 years old. My family used to go to this lake every summer for vacation. It was a small, private lake surrounded by woods, and there were only a few cabins scattered around the shore. We'd rent the same cabin every year. It was peaceful, quiet, and we loved it. One afternoon, I was playing by the water while my parents were up at the cabin grilling dinner. I was building a sandcastle when I noticed a little girl standing at the edge of the woods watching me. She looked about my age, maybe a little younger, and she was wearing a white dress that looked old-fashioned, like something from 100 years ago. I waved at her, thinking maybe she was staying at one of the other cabins. She didn't wave back. She just stared. After a few seconds, she turned and walked back into the woods. I thought it was weird, but I didn't think much of it. I went back to playing. About 10 minutes later, I looked up and she was standing there again, in the exact same spot, watching me. This time, I got up and walked toward her. I called out, "Do you want to play?" She didn't answer. As I got closer, she turned and walked back into the woods again. I followed her. I know I shouldn't have, but I was curious. I wanted to know where she was going. I walked into the trees, following the white dress as it moved between the trunks. She never looked back at me, just kept walking deeper into the forest. After a minute or two, I realized I couldn't hear the lake anymore. I couldn't hear my parents. It was completely silent. Then she stopped. She was standing in a small clearing, and she finally turned to face me. That's when I saw her face clearly for the first time. Her skin was pale, almost gray, and her eyes were empty. Not like she was sad, but like there was nothing behind them. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but no sound came out. I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I turned and ran back toward the lake as fast as I could. I didn't look back. When I burst out of the woods, my dad was standing at the shore calling my name. He said I'd been gone for almost 20 minutes, and they were about to come looking for me. I told him about the girl, and his face went white. He grabbed my hand and took me back to the cabin. That night, after I went to bed, I heard my parents talking to the cabin owner. I crept out of my room and listened from the hallway. The owner was telling them that a little girl had drowned in the lake back in the 1920s. She'd wandered away from her family's cabin and was found in the water a few days later. Her body was recovered near the spot where I'd been playing. He said other people had reported seeing her over the years, always wearing a white dress, always standing at the edge of the woods. My parents didn't tell me this until I was a teenager. When they finally did, my mom admitted that she'd seen the girl too. Standing outside our cabin window one night during that same trip, she said she thought she was hallucinating from exhaustion, so she never mentioned it. We never went back to that lake. Story 3. This story still makes me feel sick to my stomach when I think about it. When I was about 9, my parents both worked full-time jobs, so I'd spend a few hours alone at home after school until one of them got back. They drilled into me all the safety rules. Keep the doors locked. Don't answer the door for strangers. Call them if anything seemed wrong. One Thursday afternoon, I got home from school and let myself in through the front door like always. I locked it behind me, threw my backpack on the couch, and went to the kitchen to grab a snack. That's when I noticed something weird. The back door was open, not just unlocked, but wide open. I froze. My parents always made sure everything was locked before they left for work. I thought maybe I was remembering wrong, or maybe my dad had come home on his lunch break and forgot to close it. I walked over to shut it, and that's when I saw muddy footprints on the floor. They led from the back door, through the kitchen, and stopped right in the middle of the living room. I followed them with my eyes and realized they went all the way to the hallway that led to the bedrooms. My heart was pounding. I grabbed the phone and called my mom. I whispered to her that someone had been in the house. She told me to get out immediately and go to the neighbor's house. I didn't argue. I ran. I stayed with the neighbor until my parents and the police arrived. When they searched the house, they found that my bedroom window had been forced open from the outside. Someone had definitely broken in. But here's the part that still gives me chills. The police found something in my closet. It was a Polaroid camera and a stack of photos. The photos were of me, getting off the school bus, walking up to the front door, sitting in the living room doing homework. The pictures had been taken over the course of several days, maybe even weeks. Whoever broke in had been watching me. They knew my schedule. They knew when I'd be home alone. The police said it looked like they'd been inside the house before, maybe during the day when no one was home, and had been hiding things in my closet. They set up surveillance and patrol cars in our neighborhood for weeks, but they never caught the person. My mom quit her job so she could be home when I got out of school. We installed an alarm system and new locks on every door and window. To this day, my parents don't like to talk about it. My dad once admitted that he thinks the person was planning to take me. He said, if I'd come home 10 minutes earlier that day, they might have still been in the house. That thought haunts me. Story 4. When I was 11, my best friend was a girl named Emma who lived 3 houses down from me. We did everything together. Sleepovers, bike rides, you name it. One Saturday, she invited me to sleep over at her house, and my parents said yes. Everything was normal at first. We watched movies, ate popcorn, stayed up way too late. Around midnight, we finally decided to go to bed. Emma's room was on the 2nd floor, and she had this big window that looked out onto the backyard. We were lying in the dark talking when Emma suddenly sat up and said, "Do you see that?" I looked where she was pointing out the window. At first, I didn't see anything, but then I did. There was a man standing in the backyard, completely still, staring up at the window. He was just standing there in the middle of the lawn, not moving, not doing anything, just watching. Emma said, "That's the 3rd night he's been there." My stomach dropped. I asked her what she meant, and she said that for the past 3 nights, she'd seen him standing in the same spot around the same time. She thought it was her imagination at first, but now she knew it was real because I could see him too. I told her we needed to tell her parents. She said she'd tried, but they didn't believe her. They thought she was having nightmares. I didn't care. I was terrified. I ran downstairs and woke up her dad. He was annoyed at first, but when I insisted, he came upstairs. By the time we got back to the room, the man was gone. Emma's dad looked out the window and said there was nothing there. He told us we were letting our imaginations run wild and to go to sleep. But I couldn't. I stayed awake the rest of the night, staring at that window. The next morning, Emma's mom was making breakfast when she looked out the kitchen window and screamed. We all ran to see what was wrong. In the backyard, right where the man had been standing, there was a circle of dead grass. It was about 6 feet wide, perfectly round, and the grass was brown and withered like it had been burned or poisoned. Emma's dad called the police. They came and took samples of the soil, but they never found an explanation. They also checked the yard for footprints or any sign of someone being there, but there was nothing. Just the dead grass. Emma's parents finally believed us after that. They installed motion, sensor lights and cameras in the backyard. The man never came back, but the grass in that spot never grew back either. It stayed dead for years. I stopped sleeping over at Emma's house after that. She moved away a few years later, but we still talk sometimes. She told me her little sister sleeps in that room now. And she's complained about seeing someone standing in the yard at night. Emma's parents don't believe her either. Story 5. I'm 26 now, but when I was 8 years old, I went through something that I've never been able to fully explain. My family lived in a rental house that was built in the 1940s. It was old, creaky, and had this weird layout where you had to walk through one bedroom to get to another. My room was at the back of the house, and to get to it, you had to walk through my parents' room. I hated that setup because I felt trapped. If I needed to use the bathroom at night, I had to walk through my parents' room, then through the hallway, and the bathroom was all the way on the other side of the house. I started keeping a flashlight by my bed because the house was so dark at night. One night, I woke up needing to go to the bathroom. I grabbed my flashlight and tiptoed through my parents' room, trying not to wake them. As I was walking through, I glanced at their bed and froze. There were 3 people in the bed. My mom, my dad, and someone else. The third person was lying between them, facing the ceiling. I couldn't see their face because it was too dark, but I could see the outline of their body under the covers. My heart started racing. I didn't know what to do. I stood there for what felt like forever, just staring. Then, very slowly, the person's head turned toward me. I didn't wait to see more. I ran back to my room and hid under my blankets. The next morning, I told my mom what I saw. She laughed and said, I must have been dreaming. I insisted it was real, but she brushed it off. I didn't bring it up again because I didn't want her to think I was crazy. But a few weeks later, my mom sat me down and asked me to describe exactly what I'd seen that night. I told her again, and she went pale. She said that the night I saw the third person in their bed, my dad had woken up around the same time and felt someone lying between them. He said he could feel the weight of a body pressing down on the mattress, and when he reached over to touch my mom, his hand touched something else first. Something cold. He jumped out of bed and turned on the light, but there was no one there. He didn't tell my mom about it because he thought he was half asleep and imagining things. But when I described what I'd seen, he knew it wasn't just him. We moved out of that house a few months later. My parents told the landlord there was a plumbing issue, but the real reason was that they didn't feel safe there anymore. Years later, my mom admitted that wasn't the only strange thing that happened in that house. She said she'd often wake up feeling like someone was standing at the foot of their bed, watching them sleep. She never told me at the time because she didn't want to scare me. It worked.